G'day guys and gal. It's no secret that all bold white people in Warhammer are evil. We have Mannfred, who ruined Warhammer Fantasy, Archaon, who wanted to ruin Warhammer Fantasy but got carried by Mannfred and the Skaven. Lorgar is another such evil character. On the opposite end of the spectrum to this, Sigmar has mighty hair, and so does the God Emperor of Mankind, hence they are the good guys. Horus, the arch traitor, the super douche, is as bold as they come. Then, when you look at the other traitor Primarchs, Lorgar, Mortarion, Alfarius, Angron, and Perturabo are also all bold. I'm not really sure what point I'm trying to make here other than the fact that boldness is the first step to committing war crimes. Today we'll cover the rise and fall of Horus and his legion. We'll cover their origins, their part in the Great Crusade as well as the Horus Heresy. We'll also look at some of their more badass characters, looking at you Garvey or Loken, and what ended up happening to them. Let's get into it. When the Emperor decided he would milk the Milky Way with his firm yet gentle metaphorical teat-squeezing technique, he realised he needed the help of 20 demigod super soldiers leading 20 legions of less powerful but still OP demigod super soldiers. Hence, he enlisted the help of some immortal female scientists. Well, these hoes ain't loyal, hence just as the demigods, called Primarchs, were born and growing, their mother threw them into the warp and allowed the Chaos Gods, who were naughty entities not super keen on the Emperor, to scatter them across the galaxy. Some were cast off into distant hostile worlds and forced to suck on dem wolf teats for nourishment, while others fell on top of private schools and became rich privileged white kids. Horus fell on a planet that was really close to Earth, or Terra as it was called in Warhammer. Now Horus's origins are a little sketchy. He was the first Primarch found and he was found super early. He did land on Chthoniya, however he likely spent no time at all there, a few years most before the Emperor found him and brought him back to Terra. This is backed up by the fact that many of his Chthonian-born Marines either A, make fun of his accent because it's the most redneck bogan accent on the planet, or B, think his accent is put on because it is that bogan. Whatever the case, Horus doesn't do anything by accident, so it's likely he put on this accent to try bond with his Chthonian-born Space Marines, as it's likely he would have gotten less respect from them if it was known that he was more or less a Terran Primarch. Whatever the case, Horus spent the most amount of time with the Emperor and was his only Primarch for 30 years. Chthoniya would serve to be a great recruiting ground for the 16th Legion, who would earn the name Lunar Wolves after a successful invasion of the Moon. Now, not all Primarchs were made equal. Horus, Guilliman and the Lion conquered the most planets by far, whilst Horus, Sanguinius and once again the Lion were legendary warriors. In comparison, Primarchs like Lorgar or Angron were scrubs that nearly died like 10 times due to their own incompetence and only lived due to plot armor. It's no accident that Horus and the Lion were both mentioned as some of the best warriors and commanders there. Both of them were the top picks for Warmaster, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The Lunar Wolves were quick to join up with Horus and they tore a mighty tear in the galaxy's asshole. See, the Lunar Wolves would go in, completely shred a planet's defences and military might, and then move on. They wouldn't try build an empire or convert the planet to the Imperial truth. Their only job was to remove resistance so that the Imperial Guard and diplomats could go in and do the boring stuff. Hence why the Lunar Wolves were able to conquer so many planets. They didn't waste time trying to convert them to a religion like Lorgar, nor did they grind the planets to dust like Angron. They just did what needed to be done and left. Now Horus was a legendary commander, but like all the Primarchs were, and his commanding ability wasn't what set him apart. It was his charisma. Pretty much all the other legions jumped at any opportunity to team up with the Lunar Wolves, and Horus was able to form a bond with virtually all of his brothers, even the retarded ones. It's this same charisma that would be used to convince his super intelligent brothers and their super intelligent sons that selling their souls to the forces of hell and rebelling against the Emperor would be a good idea. The Lunar Wolves helped the Emperor destroy a huge Orc empire at the dawn of the Great Crusade, put down a massive 100-world rebellion by teleporting directly into the enemy's command ship as Horus personally slew the enemy warlord. Victory after victory graced the Lunar Wolves. However, it was the victory on Davin which would plant the seeds to dumb shit fuckery that would commence later on. The planet Davin was easily conquered by Horus, however he was impressed with the populace's savagery and strength, as well as their ability to seemingly accept the Imperial truth. As such, he allowed the warrior lodges of Davin to become a thing within his own legion, a kind of book club for Astartes from different squads to meet and share brotherhood. A good thing on paper, however it'd be these warrior lodges that the first blossom of heresy would commence. On top of this, the people of Davin were all secret chaos worshippers and plotted their revenge against the Imperium. Horus would arguably go up against some of the most interesting enemies of the Imperium after this. They fought the equivalent of Skynet on one planet, as well as the Covenant from Halo. At the peak of the Great Crusade, Horus would take part in the All-in-All Crusade, which was the largest Orc army ever discovered in a system. Laughably, the Imperium only needed less than 10 million troops to beat a green-skinned force that also numbered in like the 10 to 20 million. Now, if I was writing for Warhammer 40k and I wanted to talk about the largest Orc army ever, I would probably give them an army that was at least bigger than the number of combatants in our very own World War I. You would kind of expect there to be a billion or so Orcs on this planet. It's not that impressive if we have real-life wars that are way more spicy than this. But alas, the Orcs were smashed. Obviously. And the Emperor declared his intention to return to Terra and work on a secret project. This project would be the Emperor opening up the Eldar webway for human use, hence significantly reducing humanity's reliance on the warp, thus starving the Chaos Gods. This would be a permanent victory against Chaos. However, with his attention on the project and how delicate the project was, he did not want the Primarchs to know and potentially feed that information to Titsnitch by accident or on purpose. Ignorance is a great weapon against Chaos. In his stead, the Emperor declared Horus as the new Warmaster of the Imperium and commander of all the Imperium's armies. Most of the Primarchs were like, sure, whatever. The Lion, one of the only Primarchs who was arguably greater than Horus, did not agree with this, thinking that he himself should be the Warmaster. I second this. The Lion was a Space Knight. Space Knights are cool and should totally be Warmaster. On top of this, the Lion also had an impressive mane. No shit, you know, he was the Lion. Hence, he was certainly a good guy with absolutely zero questionable intentions. However, Horus was now Warmaster, and that was that. And he did a good job of it. Initially. He crushed the powerful evil Xeno race called the Nephilim, and even discovered and violently sodomized the planet that thought it was Terra and had its own God Emperor of mankind, who was less of a god and more of a delusional prick who received a bolt to the brain, but was nonetheless an interesting experience. Horus would go on to bring death to arachnophobia itself, as he landed on a planet nicknamed Murder, along with Sanguinius and Fulgrim, which was full of giant spiders. They literally fought giant spiders, called Mega Arachnids, for 6 months. Now, that Halo Covenant I mentioned earlier rocked up during this, and they were called the Interrex, and they were a super advanced civilization, more advanced than the Imperium, encompassing multiple Xeno races, and they were the sworn enemy of Chaos. They were honestly the perfect ally of the Imperium. So it was none other than Erebus who would ruin everything. Say it with me. Fuck Erebus. See, Horus was very diplomatic. He gave everyone and everything a chance. The false emperor I mentioned before was given 3 chances to surrender before he was killed. The conflict between the Interrex and Horus was due to Erebus sneaking into one of their museums and stealing a powerful Chaos Blade. The same blade that would turn Horus to Chaos down the track, and whose shards would fail to turn Guilliman to Chaos. With the blade stolen, the Interrex thought that Horus was an agent of Chaos, hence they attacked him and his crew. Hence, Horus destroyed them all. Humans are more advanced than silverback gorillas. However, if you were locked in a room with a silverback gorilla, you would get fucked up. Same situation here. The Imperium might not have reached the end of pi like the Interrex probably had, but super advanced science doesn't do much when space marines start dropping on your planet from orbit with rocket launcher machine guns. Despite this, Horus expressed regret with the destruction of the Interrex and desired to bring other Xeno races into the Imperium as vassals. He really was the greatest of them all. He even refused an offer by the Emperor to rename his legion to the Sons of Horus, as Horus wanted to be humble and not above his brothers. As time went on, the weight of Warmaster grew heavy on old mate Horus. The Emperor had abandoned him and their crusade without telling him why. On top of this, the Biggie also created the High Lords, who would govern the Imperium. It almost seemed like the Biggie was preparing to phase out the Space Marines and the Primarchs once the war was done. Erebus and Lorgar had also been talking mad shit about the Emperor to Horus. However, despite all this, Horus was still a loyal son, until Davin happened. See, Davin, the planet Horus brought into compliance, did some hectic chaos voodoo and basically corrupted the Imperial army there, turned them into a bunch of Nurglite zombies. Rough. Horus rushed back to sort it out, as Primarchs got pretty pissed off when planets they dealt with suddenly became an issue, and this was a serious issue. I mean, imagine leaving a planet where your mates wave goodbye to return 60 years later and find it full of zombies. Horus fought his way to the Imperial Governor, who was wielding the Chaos Blade that Erebus had stolen from the Interrex. The Governor was also a bloated zombie who was surprisingly powerful. The blade he wielded was basically a sentient Nurgle blade hellbent on killing Horus. The two fought, and whilst Horus killed the governor, the knife was able to cut Horus, poisoning him. Horus returned to his ship but fell into a coma as his body began to die. The poison was too powerful for Imperial science to deal with. It's unknown if this was killing Horus because Horus was a little bitch whose soul was already compromised, or if Chaos did indeed have some hectic poison and even someone as incorruptible as Dawn or Guilliman would have also died from this. Guilliman was cut by a blade that was forged out of this blade that mortally wounded Horus, and he shrugged it off due to him being completely incorruptible. You know, no surprises here, Guilliman has hair. Erebus convinced the Lunar Wolves to allow him to take Horus into the Temple of the Serpent, which was a Chaos Temple. No shit. Where Erebus entered into Horus's mind and began being a twat. Erebus showed Horus the future, with the Emperor as a god on a golden throne, and a dying, decaying Imperium that was against everything they fought for. Whilst this future was to come true, ironically, it was because Horus tried to stop it via letting the Case God's finger his bumhole until he prolapsed. Interestingly enough, Magnus saw this happening and also entered into Horus's mind. He told Horus of Erebus's deceit, unmasked Erebus, who was posing as a lunar wolf in his vision, and told him not to join Chaos. This is the point where I believe that if Horus had resisted Chaos and trusted Magnus, then the poison would have failed and Horus would have lived, likely through Magnus's intervention. The idea of the poison was to get Horus into that temple, it was never supposed to kill him. Even with the manipulation revealed, Horus's own self-doubt and resentment towards the Emperor was enough to allow him to agree to Chaos saving his life and turning against the Emperor. Horus awoke, the last shreds of his hair on his shiny head were gone. He was now Horus, the bold cunt. Horus immediately renamed his legion to the Sons of Horus as a symbolic way of showing his new colours. The crusade continued, however Horus began losing his care and mercy. He became ruthless in his goals and began turning the other legions and their Primarchs to his cause. His charisma was once used to save trillions of lives and avert cataclysmic wars. Now it would be used to spark the greatest conflict the galaxy had ever seen since the War in Heaven. Lorgar was already a douchebag pedo-chaos worshipper. Conrad and Angron were already fucked in the head and thought killing the Emperor would be fun. Fulgrim was already corrupted due to the Layer Blade. Perturabo had tons of resentment towards Dawn and the Emperor because he wasn't Daddy's favourite builder. He also genocided his home planet and didn't think the Emperor would forgive him for it. Mortarion was angry that the Big E was a psyker and hid the warp from him, and Magnus had his soul shattered with only the arsehole parts reforming into his main form. Alpharis also listened to some bullshit prophecy by a bunch of aliens and decided to trust them for some reason. So now Horus had his legions, but not all Space Marine are dicks. In fact, 1/3 of each legion were not willing to betray the Emperor, hence they had to die. Here is where the most interesting Space Marine characters come into place. Loyalist Astartes in Traitor Legions. That 1/3 of those legions was deployed in mass to Istvan to deal with a planetary governor who had rebelled and fallen to Slaanesh. As the 1/3 were deployed on the planet, Horus and the traitors audibly bombed it into oblivion, seeking to wipe them out in one go. However, through the brave efforts of Saul Tarvitz, Nathaniel Garo, and Gavriel Loken, this would prove to be a challenge. Garviel of the Lunar Wolves led the Loyalists, and Saul of the Emperor's Children warned them of the orbital bombing, whilst Nathaniel of the Death Guard escaped to warn the Imperium of Horus's betrayal. With Saul's warning, most of the 1/3 were able to survive the virus bombing and held off the traitors for 2 entire months. Loken used to be a member of Horus's Mournival, his most trusted advisors, so it was pretty personal for him. Eventually, through overwhelming force and the betrayal of Lucius, the Loyalists were pinned down and Loken lost the duel to Abaddon and the world was once again bombed. Loken would survive this, somehow, and get some pretty hectic revenge. With their Loyalist side purged, the traitors waited for the Imperium's response, and respond they did with the force of 3 full Loyalist legions, backed up by another 4 legions. Legions that were actually secretly traitor, hence the Loyalists, the Salamanders, Ironhands and Raven Guard, were put on the spit and penetrated hard, creating the Istvan drop site massacre. Horus would then begin to beeline for Terra, becoming more twisted as he went as each of his brothers slowly became completely corrupted, hence really unstable. By the end of the Heresy, everyone was so batshit insane that if it weren't for Perturabo, they likely all would have killed each other before they even arrived at Terra. On the way to Terra, Horus stopped at Molech, the place where the Emperor tricked the Chaos Gods into giving him a power boost. Horus sought that same power boost, but there was a bit of a garrison there as Daddy wasn't super keen on sharing his powers. During this battle, Leman Russ and his wolves attacked Horus, and despite Horus's chaos boosts, Leman wounded him and actually had him at his mercy. Leman, being the Emperor's executioner, should have, executed him, but he hesitated, so Horus took the moment to kick his ass. God damn it, Lehman, can't you at least kill one traitor Primarch? He's already had 3 of them at his mercy and goes all soft at the last second. With the power buff of Molech secured, the assault on Terra was to begin. The traitors had 9 legions buffed by chaos, as well as millions of cultists, dozens of titans, countless demons and other monsters. They also had 8 Primarchs. Alpharius was dead at this point. The Loyalists had 3 legions, the Custodians and Sisters of Silence, and a huge force of guardsmen, titans, 4 Primarchs, and of course, the Big E. And they were also defending the most defendable structure in the galaxy, but even then they were still disgustingly outnumbered and outgunned. Yet the traitors couldn't do it. Wave after wave of warp-infused freaks and empowered space marines died as they tried to take the palace. Rogel kicked Fulgrim's ass, Sanguinius probably kicked Angron's ass, half the traitor army got bored and went off to terrorize the population of the world, yet the palace stood. The Ultramarines, Space Wolves and Dark Angels were also soon to arrive on Terra, which would be the end of the traitors. Hence Horus, or maybe it was Abaddon, lowered the void shields on their ship as an invitation for the Emperor to come fight. The Big E is a sucker for invitations, hence he, Rogel, Sanguinius and a number of Custodians and Space Marines boarded the ship. Sanguinius found Horus first and the two fought. Now currently it's thought that Sanguinius was wounded and tired, and Horus was filled to the brim with power and fresh, hence Horus killed Sanguinius, causing the Black Rage within the Blood Angels. Horus and the Big E then fight, with Horus kicking the shit out of the Big E due to the Big E not being able to bring himself to kill his favourite son. Horus then kills Alanis Pius, causing the Big E to realise that all bold people are evil, and he Kamehamehas Horus and deletes him from existence. Now that's what we know so far, as the new Horus Heresy books haven't concluded yet, but I feel like the ending will be different. For starters, the Emperor doesn't seem like the kind of guy to hesitate and let his emotions stop him. The Emperor we have grown to know would not hesitate in deleting Horus, especially since how obviously evil and gone Horus was by that point. Like, by the Siege of Terra, Horus was little more than the meat suit for the Chaos Gods. His soul had already been more or less completely raped. On top of this, Sanguinius is a beast, so here's what I think would be a cool twist. Sanguinius finds Horus first and the two fight. Horus gains the upper hand and nearly wins, however Sanguinius falls into the Black Rage, causing his sons to do so, and he kills Horus. The Big E walks in to see Horus defeated, but Sanguinius, in his rage, attacks the Emperor. The Emperor cannot bring himself to kill his true favourite son, hence takes an absolute beating before he realises he has to kill Sanguinius out of mercy, and he does so. He then destroys Horus' soul so that if Horus ever came back via chaos or something else, he could never tell anyone of what happened to Sanguinius. It's a bit of a far-fetched theory, but I think it suits pretty well into the grim darkness of 40k. Whatever happens, I'm very keen to see. With Horus dead, the traitor forces break and retreat, being chased all the way back into the Eye of Terror, where they sat on a demon world with Horus' corpse and begun to rot. Fabius Bile led the Emperor's children to attack the sons of Horus, and they stole Horus' body with the intention of cloning him to reunite the traitor legions. However, the issue is that Primarchs are more than just the body, their souls give them power, hence the Horus clone had no soul as Horus' soul didn't exist anymore. So when Abaddon led a counter-attack, he was able to kill the Horus clone in combat, earning the respect of the Sons of Horus and becoming their leader. He then renamed them to the Black Legion, as they coloured their armour black in mourning of Horus, bringing an end to the Sons of Horus and the start of the Black Legion, which is a video in itself. Now what of Garviel? Well, turns out surviving the betrayal of your father as well as like 3 exterminatuses isn't good for your mental health. Hence Loken went insane and wandered the planet of Istvan. To make matters worse, various of his dead allies had been reanimated by Nurgle as zombies, hence he was alone on a planet full of his dead friends and zombies that he had to fight all the time. Eventually Nathaniel came back for him and rescued his friend. He then became a Knight of Malkador and went on various missions against the traitor legions throughout the galaxy. Eventually, Loken and many other loyalists from traitor legions were offered the role of a Grey Knight by the Emperor himself. They accepted, except for Loken, who knew that this destiny was not his. His destiny was to kill the Mournival, his destiny was to kill the Sons of Horus. And kill them he has been doing. We don't know his final fate yet, however. Abaddon is still alive and it seems Loken is not, so it seems like they face off and it doesn't end well for Loken. In saying that though, Loken is a beast and he's been tearing the Sons of Horus a new arsehole on the daily, even saying this cool line: "I was never a son of Horus. I was and remain a lunar wolf, a proud son of Chthoniya, a loyal servant to the Emperor, beloved by all. I am your enemy." That was straight to Horus, by the way. Talk about a burn, son. There are others, like the obnoxious little Horus, the large funny Torgadon, and the incompetent Abaddon, but Loken is the one that deserves screen time. With Horus dead and the Lunar Wolves replaced by the Black Legion, there is nothing for them beyond the Horus Heresy. They are gone, poof, dead, deleted, deceased, penetrated, molested, kitty-fiddled, and finger-blasted. And that does us for today, guys, the lore and story of the Lunar Wolves and their Primarch Horus. If you enjoyed the video, want to support the channel, and want to see some cartoon tits, then Patreon is the place to be. Only $1 gives you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai, and $10 gives you access to the Majorkill hentai calendar. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more bolding content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.